Very much. And now joining us to talk about the political angle on the situation, we have a panel of MPs. From Edmonton is NDP Foreign Affairs critic Paul Dewar. In Toronto, Liberal MP Brian Wilford. And here in Ottawa is Conservative Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence Laurie Hahn. So let's start first in Edmonton with Paul Dewar. Mr. Dewar, what do you think of what our experts had to say and where our politicians are at on this issue?
Well, there's two realities. There's the reality of what's actually going on as they laid it out, and then there's the reality of the Conservatives. And the Conservatives have been using the Arctic as a wedge of sorts and kind of a pawn in the chess game they're playing, and that is to, have everyone concerned about our sovereignty, and the only way that we can secure our sovereignty is that to buy fighter jets, as has been mentioned. And then there's the other reality, and that's of scientists and those who are working on the ground and saying, we're behind. And I'll give you an example of that. There's something that is called the Canadian Polar Commission. It was actually put together by a former Conservative government to do research. To coordinate all the research is absolutely critical when you're negotiating, like Norway has done with Russia. And you know what, Jane? We haven't appointed anyone to the Canadian Polar Commission for 2 years. There's no one on the board, there's no director. So we've had this organization there leaderless, and we have a government who is missing in action on the real issues and using the Arctic, frankly, for things like buying fighter jets that aren't the key issue of the North. And I know Laurie will disagree with that. When you talk to scientists and diplomats, they're saying, it's really odd. Why don't we have anyone there?
Paul Dewar, let's bring in Brian Wilford on this now, and then we'll hear from Mr. Hahn. Mr. Wilford.
Well, Jane, the National Defence Committee in June did a report on Arctic sovereignty, and we provided about 18 key recommendations to the government. Now, the government has 120 days to respond. They haven't responded yet, but I would point out to you that many of those issues could be dealt with very effectively by the government, including appointing a committee of cabinet chaired by the Prime Minister to deal with Arctic issues, an Arctic ambassador, which at the moment we don't have, dealing with icebreakers, etc. But it's also about the people of the North. For me, it's an issue that we have a great love affair with the North, and we say that it's Canadian, but we also have to exert our sovereignty. And one of the issues clearly is the 1825 agreement with Great Britain and with Russia between the Yukon and Alaska. And obviously we are putting forth our claim to the United Nations, as the Foreign Minister had indicated, but we have to be able to really assert it in terms of our own control, and being able to do that in part is with these recommendations that, by the way, all members from all parties agreed to in June. And I would hope that if the government is really serious about an all-encompassing approach to Arctic sovereignty and to these issues with our neighbours, that they adopt them quickly and they take action on that to really show that to Canadians and to other Arctic countries that we are really serious about our claims, and not be diverted by trying to create diversions on some of these issues, such as reenacting, it seems, the Cold War with the Russians. I mean, for me, it's an important issue.
Let's ask Mr. Hahn about that. I mean, is that what you're doing with these fighter jets? Are you reenacting the Cold War? And what about the agenda from the Defense Committee about Arctic sovereignty?
Well, Jane, that's just nonsense. I mean, trust these guys to take an issue that is nonpartisan and try to turn it into a partisan issue. In fact, the Defense Committee, obviously on which I sit, did a good job of that report. We're going to be looking at it carefully. I don't know where it's going to go from there, but we have made the Arctic one of our top priorities. That was clear in the throne speech. It's clear in some of the measures we've taken. Our priorities up there are our sovereignty, to be sure, and the F-35 is only one part of that. It's an important part, but it's only one part of that. We're looking at economic and social development, protecting the environment, because we know the resources up there are going to be developed at some point. We have to make sure they're developed in an environmentally responsible manner. And local governance, bringing the people of the North into this process, both economically, socially, and developmental-wise, and so on. And we have been working with our allies. We've had agreements with the Danes in the Eastern Arctic, Americans in the Western Arctic. The Foreign Affairs Minister is visiting Russia and Oslo and Norway and Finland, and dealing with his counterparts over there. So we are engaged. We've taken a lot of measures with respect to the Canada First Defence Strategy, in terms of the deep sea port, in terms of the research station, in terms of Arctic offshore patrol ships, new satellite systems, building up the Arctic Rangers. So to say that, you know, that we're not engaged is absolutely nonsense. You know, this is a non-partisan issue. This isn't an issue for Conservatives, Liberals, NDP. It's a Canadian issue, and let's work on this together, for crying out loud.
Well, let's move on to an issue that has become very partisan, and that's the long gun registry. And Mr. Dewar, your leader, Jack Layton, had a press conference today saying you've got the numbers now to make sure that the gun registry survives. And he issued a challenge to the Prime Minister to work together on the compromise solution. Do you think that there will be a compromise on this long gun registry issue? Is that possible?
Well, of course it's possible. I mean, you know, Laurie just talked about dealing with things in a sensible manner. Here's an opportunity to deal with it in a sensible manner. I'm in Edmonton right now, and actually I've heard from a lot of people wishing there was a compromise to get out of this stale, you know, kind of debate that's been going on about those who don't care for the registry and those who want to keep it. And, you know, here's a way to do that. We've put the proposal forward. It's in the Prime Minister's court, and he can decide. Does he want to continue to divide this country, or are we going to actually solve this problem and deal with it in a responsible manner? And I hope we do. I'm not sure about the rhetoric from John Baird talking about